Sunday Surefire podcast. I'm your host, the Commish. I am coming at you solo here to talk about the NFC East. That's right. I'm talking studs. I'm talking sleepers. I'm talking bust guys at their average draft position. I'm even going over some dynasty stash candidates, guys that you want to get on the bottom of your dynasty rosters. Maybe park them in a taxi squad. Guys are going to return value someday for you down the road. Maybe it's 2024, maybe it's later, but those late round gems in Dynasty that we all want in terms of project players and see if they can pan out and provide some value to our Dynasty rosters. To do this exercise, of course, I am using the Fantasy Pros half point PPR average draft position. That's going to be the case for the studs I'm going to talk about, the sleepers, as well as the bust candidate I want to bring up on the show today. Also, for the Dynasty Stash candidate, just keep in mind I'm going to be using the Fantasy Pros Dynasty and Keeper rankings to kind of give you a reference of where that player is going to be going in terms of, guys that are where they're ranked in the community, where they're thought of and all that. So keep that in mind as we roll along here. And as we always do here on the program every year, we go around the country. We talk about all the different divisions. We start out on the West Coast. We are rounding here out towards our last couple divisions. We're all the way back east. We're going to do the NFC East here today. And then when I'm back on with Downtown Brown and Ethan Weaver, we'll give you the AFC East and we'll wrap up our road trip around the country before diving into a lot more redraft focused content as the month of August is finally here. But with that said, let's start with the big ticket items in the NFC East. There's a few of them to go over. We're going to start with the highest ranked player per Fantasy Pros half point average draft position, or ADP. That's going to be none other than CeeDee Lamb, last season's WR1 overall. This year, he is average draft position number 2 overall and WR1 again this year. No surprise there. And look, I love CeeDee Lamb. I have him in several dynasty leagues. A big fan of him. Benefited from him big time last season. But if I have to draft him number 2 overall, I'm going to be out at cost here, guys, believe it or not. And that's because, and I've said this on previous shows, that you can call me an old school guy. You can say I'm stuck in 1995 or anything like that. But in the top 3 picks, I want one of these elite running backs. I want your Christian McCaffrey. Breece Hall's my number 2 running back. Bijan Robinson's my number 3 running back. I want one of those 3 guys before I'm touching a wide receiver or a tight end in one QB format. So that's where I'm at. I'm sticking to it. I'll be a big CeeDee Lamb guy again this year. I have him as my WR1 overall. So if you want to say I'm with ADP on that much, you can. But if I have to press the button at number 2, I'm not going to do it. It's just not how I want to fill out my dynasty or my redraft rosters. And I want to go that hero running back approach. And if I pass on one of those guys at the second pick in the draft, I'm probably not going to get a guy I want at the end of the second round coming back. So really just a roster construction deal more than anything else for me, being out on CeeDee Lamb at his ADP number 2 overall price point. The next player here is another wide receiver in this division. He plays for the rival Philadelphia Eagles, and that's going to be A.J. Brown coming in at ADP number 9, WR6 off the board. And look, ADP number 9 feels about right for Brown, but we are here to split hairs in this category in the first round, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I just want to go with a running back here. You can call me a running back lover all you want, but once that top tier running backs goes, we're talking Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. Then the next tier comes off the board for me. That's with the wide receivers, of course. Guys like CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Once those guys come off the board, I'm actually going to pivot back to the running back position. And I'm looking at guys like Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs even. So it's really not a case of I dislike A.J. Brown or I think he's a ridiculous call here towards the back end of the top 10. But I want to go with one of these backs because I want to make sure that I'm starting my draft with the opportunity to at least get one of those really good running backs at the end of tier 2 that I talked about. And then maybe even look at wide receiver in the second round if I can't get a second one of those backs even coming back. So that's where I'm at. Again, it comes down to roster construction for me. Like A.J. Brown a lot, just not ready to hit the button on him quite yet at number 9 overall in ADP. And let's go back to running back. Let's talk Saquon Barkley, ADP number 11, RB6 overall. And I just kind of went over my strategy at the end of round 1. So it's probably no surprise to hear that I'm going to be in on Saquon Barkley at number 11 overall. Again, RB6. At this spot, he just represents the end of an RB tier that I just don't want to miss the boat on. So if you're drafting in round 1 at the end, and look, you gotta, you're at the turn there. You got 2 picks, then you got a long wait coming back. I want to make sure I leave that spot with one of those really high profile running backs because I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to get those guys. I probably won't when my third round pick comes off the clock. So look, when it comes to Saquon in Philadelphia, I know Hurts is going to steal his share of touchdowns. The tush push is probably still going to be a thing, even without Jason Kelsey in the fold, but I don't care. Like, give me some Saquon Barkley at the end of round one. Maybe even he sneaks into early round two. This year, guys, he gets to run behind Pro Football Focus's second-ranked offensive line. I mean, hell, Barkley's been in the league for 6 years, guys, and he's never once played in a top 15 scoring offense. That's going to change this season. He's going to be in an offense in the top half of the league in Philadelphia this season. And it wouldn't shock me at all if he gives us a top 5 running back season in 2024. And I want pieces of that, especially in redraft, where I only have that to contend with this season. I don't have to worry about anything else coming down the pike like I would perhaps in a dynasty league. Now let's talk a bust candidate, a player that I don't think is going to return cost their value, or rather value at their current draft cost. That's ADP 91, RB 31. I'm talking Austin Ekeler. That's right. The guy who used to be Mr. Everything for fantasy football purposes. Hell, the guy was a complete cheat code in his heyday as a top tier RB1. Even last season, he was going in the top 5 of most drafts. And just kind of another example of a running back falling off here. And that fall can come quickly. And that's certainly the case here with Ekeler, who goes in just 1 year's time from the top 5 all the way down to ADP 91 overall in half-point scoring formats, according to Fantasy Pros at the moment. So look, and the reason I'm out on him here is because really what we saw last season in 2023. I mean, we saw regression in some major categories for running backs. Despite being 11th in opportunity share in 2023, he was just 36th in rushing yards, 40th in fantasy points per opportunity, 31st in yards per touch, 36th in juke rate, and 46th in breakaway run rate. So just trending in the wrong direction at a tough time. And that really shouldn't come as a complete shock now, as Eckler's entering his age 29 season, and he's closing in on a 1,500 career touches on his frame. So the miles are piling up for him. There's a lot of wear and tear on that body. And he's also landing in a new home where Brian Robinson, younger running back, definitely more suited for the early downs, being the grinder in this offense, and certainly taking most likely the majority of the running back touches at the goal line. And I think Eckler is really left to sort of mix it on passing downs, which he has openly admitted that he's open to doing. And if you believe sources, he was willing to take a lesser role last season. There just wasn't an opportunity for him to scale back his workload in 2023, which is probably good for his NFL lifespan if he's going to play another couple seasons. But for fantasy purposes, we want our running backs to eat volume, and we want them to score touchdowns. Receptions are nice too. And I do still think that Eckler can get some of those, but I'm a little skeptical with Jaden Daniels joining the team as the second overall pick in the draft at quarterback. Him having a dual threat skill set where he can run and pass, I just don't really see those guys checking down to running backs a ton. Those guys who are mobile, who are able to kind of take the ball and do it themselves on that standpoint. And so it kind of leaves us in a situation where if it's unlikely that we get a TD spike out of Eckler with Robinson stealing the goal line carries, and it's not going to be a high volume touch total again for Eckler for this point, and he's not getting a ton of check down receptions, I'm just not sure where the fantasy value is going to come from Austin Eckler in 2024 or likely ever again. So his price point itself is fine. I think RB 31 is not a deal breaker completely. And I think there's a realm of possibilities he could finish RB 31-ish and kind of quote unquote return value in that spot. But there's just more guys with upside that I want to take in this range. I mean, his teammate Brian Robinson, I just mentioned he's probably in line for more touchdowns here. He goes a couple of spots later, RB 33 overall. Even further down the list, you get rookies like Trey Benson, Blake Corum, and even a second-year guy like Tajay Spears, who's kind of locked into more of a true 50-50 committee and can kind of fill in, do a lot of the same things that Tony Pollard can do in the receiving game. I like him better at cost, too, especially if I can get him a round or so later. So as much as it is for Eckler, as great as it's been, it's kind of time to say thanks for the good memories, but we're moving on to another direction. Now let's round into some sleepers. I know at this time of year, everyone loves talking a good sleeper candidate. And I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels, number 107 overall, QB 15. And I've talked him up here on other episodes. Talked about him recently here about Austin Eckler, kind of how I don't like him this season because of Daniels' rushing floor. So naturally, he's a sleeper here for me outside the top 100 picks. And look, I know rookie quarterbacks for some fantasy managers, they can be kind of hard to trust, and I get it. But I'm all about him here outperforming that ADP. The rushing upside's well documented. His final 2 seasons at LSU saw him have over 2,000 rushing yards and over 20 touchdowns on the ground. We know that's going to be part of his game at the next level. I just don't think he's getting quite enough credit as a passer. let's remember that Daniels is entering the league at sort of an advanced age. This isn't some typical 21-year-old rookie that played, or that played maybe like 1, maybe 2 years in college. Like, no, this guy has a lot of experience under his belt at the collegiate level. I mean, he's actually 24 years old during his rookie season. He'll turn that towards the end of the season. And he started in 55 games in college. So this is a guy who has a lot more seasoning on his resume than most other guys in this class. And he's stepping into a Cliff Kingsbury offense that saw Kyler Murray finish as a QB1 as a rookie and followed by multiple seasons of top 5 quarterback production on a points per game basis. And you're telling me I can get all of that here at number 107? Like, sign me up, man. Like, Daniels here is quickly becoming my favorite late round QB target. And if you're really worried about him as a quote unquote, a rookie, and I'm not really sure if I can trust that guy, you can take him there. And there's also several guys after you can get at the position. I mean, hell, you can even stream quarterback if you want to in redraft. But if you want to draft a second quarterback, you can go ahead and do that. I mean, Trevor Lawrence goes later. Justin Herbert, who we've seen have a high ceiling in the past, he goes later. If you like Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, you think he can give you another season, maybe as a late round, as a late QB1. You can go ahead and pivot in that direction too and take him as well. There's plenty of opportunity here in most leagues for you to get Jaden Daniels and a quote unquote safer guy if you choose to go that route. But I'll tell you what, guys, I'm all in on Jaden Daniels having a massive ceiling this year, and I think he's going to crush at his current ADP of 107 overall. So let's go around into another sleeper. I'm going to talk about Devin Singletary here, going 86th overall and number 30 in terms of running backs. And I know this one is not a sexy pick by any means. Singletary's been around the league for a while now, and he's been a solid contributor, had some good moments in fantasy, but he's never truly been an elite running back at any, for any long stretch of time. And I'm not telling you he's going to be elite this season either, but I really just think this is the case of the price point just being too good for me to want to pass up. I mean, look, we're drafting him to be a mid-range RB3, and what do we want with those guys? We want upside, right? And what if I told you like you could grab a running back who's going to dominate touches in his offense, and he plays on an offense that's lacking for weapons in the passing game department, both at depth receiver and at tight end. So I just think here, like I look around the Giants depth chart and what do I see? I see Tyrone Tracy, who's a 6th-round rookie pick. Okay, maybe you like him as a deep dynasty stash or something, but is he a guy that you can pencil in stealing a ton of work from Singletary from day one? I don't think so. The same goes for someone like Eric Gray or a UDFA from 2022. We got Joshua Corbin or Jashawn Corbin. I mean, like that guy was cut by the Giants last year. I just don't see anyone on this depth chart taking significant work away from Singletary, no matter what the game script calls for. And look, I mean, Singletary's never really had this little competition at any point in his career, and he's familiar with this offense. You remember he was with Brian Daboll from their time together in Buffalo. And like I said, he can do a little bit of everything. He can definitely run the ball for you, and he catches between 30 and 40 balls a year. And that was while he was in a committee approach. So I just think he's in line to exceed his career high in touches in a season. Like so far, we've seen 246 be the most volume he's given in terms of total touches. And I think he's going to easily exceed that this season if he's healthy. So going in the middle of round 8, any risks associated with Singletary are really baked into his price point already. And I just think that even if he takes a small step above this, like becomes an RB2, like it's already found money at that point. An RB2 is someone you can plug into a flex spot every single week and give you a leg up on most of your competitors in your league. So if the ADP is going to stay here in round 8, I'm going to have no problem hitting the button on Devin Singletary to be a depth running back for me in 2024. Dynasty stash candidate. Let's talk about a player that I want to park either in a taxi squad spot, or if I want to throw him at the end of my bench in a dynasty league and hopefully he pans out someday, I'm going to go with Ben Sinnott, number 122 overall in the Fantasy Pros dynasty rankings, and number tight end. He's in there on tight end 15 overall. So outside the top 12 tight ends, he's going in the late second, maybe even the 3rd round of rookie drafts. And at that price, he's accessible to just about everybody, whether you were a contender last season, ended up with a late pick in the second, third round, whatever the case may be. Or if you're a rebuilding team, maybe you have more assets, you can go get a guy like this on relatively cheap. So he is accessible to everybody. And look, I just love the athleticism with Sinnott. I mean, he's 6'3", 250, ran a 4.68 40-yard dash, a 4.23 shuttle, and a 10.6 broad jump. So that part of the puzzle is definitely there for him. And the opportunity for him, at least in the long run, is massive. I mean, currently the team has Zach Ertz there on a 1-year contract in front of Sinnott on the depth chart, but Ertz turns 34 this season, and we know his days in the league are numbered at this point. But if we're going to talk about Ertz, let's talk about what he did as the top tight end in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. I mean, in 2021 and 2022, Ertz was a top 12 tight end on a points per game basis. And in 2022, he was the tight end 6 on a points per game basis. So we know Sonat's going to step into that role at some point in the Kingsbury offense, just now in Washington. So if we have to wait until 2025 for that to happen, that's fine. The price is not prohibitive on a guy like Sonat because we're talking about a 22-year-old rookie who's got nothing but time on his side. And if I can buy low right now, I'm willing to be patient to see what the future can hold for him. Really talented player here in Washington who can only grow with this, which is hopefully going to be an ascending offense surrounded by Jaden Daniels. I actually have one bonus player too that I want to mention when it comes to the NFC East. I mean, this player, he just didn't really fit any of our stated categories. I mean, he's not a proven stud because he hasn't done it before. I got that. He's definitely not a sleeper because he goes a little bit too high in ADP to make that argument. And he's definitely not a dynasty stash guy because he's way too expensive in rookie drafts to be considered a player that anybody could have access to and qualify for that category. And I think there's no way in hell he's going to be a bust at his current cost. I'm talking about none other than Malik Neighbors, who goes ADP 47th overall and gets good for WR24. And look, he's by far my favorite rookie pick in round 4. And I think that he has a mid-range WR1 upside this season. I mean, Brian Daboll as the offensive coordinator at Buffalo, I think back to those days when they traded for Stephon Diggs in 2020. And in the 2 years with Diggs, when he first joined the team, when Brian Daboll was the offensive coordinator, he made him top 5 in targets in each of those seasons, including 2020, his first year on the squad, where he was number 1 in the league in targets. And look, I'm not here to tell you that 2024 Daniel Jones is going to have the type of career step that Josh Allen took back in 2020 to become one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, but I'm just saying the last time Brian Daboll's offense had one defined receiver to funnel all kinds of targets to, like, it was pure gold from a fantasy football standpoint. And if you pay attention to Hard Knocks, I know that's kind of anecdotal and you never know what's getting cut out of that show, but you would see just how high the team was on Malik Neighbors throughout the entirety of the offseason process. I mean, hell, according to them, they had him above Marvin Harrison Jr. on their big board, and he ended up falling to them at 106 in the NFL draft. So even though I don't expect this Giants team to be kind of a high octane offense at all, I mean, I can see them taking a step this year and being kind of around league average. And as far as at least as far as points per game go, and I think that's all Neighbors really needs to eat for fantasy managers in 2024 because I think he's going to be one of the most targeted wide receivers right out of the gate this season. I mean, I think there's a chance next season we're talking about Neighbors as a guy who's a borderline first round pick, if not a lock to be drafted in the top 12 picks in redraft leagues next season. And that's what I got for you folks here on a fun episode there, quickly to buzz through the NFC East. We'll be wrapping up next with the AFC East, and that'll be it for our road trip. Then it'll be full-blown redraft season with the mock drafts and all that stuff, flag planting season, guys that we're just pounding the drum for that are going to be great this year. But until next time, folks, peace.